prosecutors in New Mexico have just announced that actor Alec Baldwin and the armorer on the film, Rust, will both be charged with involuntary manslaughter for their roles in the fatal movie set shooting back in October of 2021. The film's cinematographer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, was killed. The film's director was injured. Josh Campbell's back with us from Santa Fe. He's with Santa Fe's district attorney, and this is her first TV interview since the charging decision. Josh?
Yeah, thanks. I'm here with the district attorney. Madam District Attorney, thank you for speaking with us. I just want to start, how did you come to this prosecutive decision?
Well, along with my special prosecutor, we got the report from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office. We initiated an extensive review of that, and I will say that it was a well investigated case. But we had some follow-up that we had to do, had to speak with some experts, and once we read through everything and researched the case law and the law here in New Mexico, we realized that we believed that there was probable cause to charge Alec Baldwin and Hannah Gutierrez-Reed with involuntary manslaughter. And
what were some of the key pieces of evidence that you used that factored into that decision?
Well, that there was such a lack of safety and safety standards on that set, that there were live rounds on set. They were mixed in with regular dummy rounds. Nobody was checking those, or at least they weren't checking them consistently. And then they somehow got loaded into a gun, handed off to Alec Baldwin. He didn't check it. He didn't do any of the things that he was supposed to do to make sure that he was safe or that anyone around him was safe. And then he pointed the gun at Hannah Gutierrez-Reed and he pulled the trigger.
You talk about the safety on the set. As part of your investigation, was there one thing that was done or one thing that was said that sealed it for you, that this should be prosecuted?
No, actually, I think it was the totality of the circumstances, that this was a really fast and loose set, and that nobody was doing their job. There were 3 people that if they had done their job that day, this tragedy wouldn't have happened. And that's David Halls, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, and Alec Baldwin. If they had just done their basic duties, we wouldn't be standing here.
Can you help our viewers understand? So the state officials did a report. It was signed by the chief medical investigator saying that there was no compelling evidence that this was intentional, right?
Right.
So help our viewers understand, if it's an accident, which most people seem to think it is, why is that a crime?
Because just because it's an accident doesn't mean that it's not criminal. Our involuntary manslaughter statute covers unintentional killings, unintentional homicides. The rest of our homicide statutes cover intentional, but unintentional means they didn't mean to do it. They didn't have the intent to kill. But it happened anyway, and it happened because of more than mere negligence, because of they didn't exercise due caution or circumspection, and that's what happened here.
And what's your response to, there might be people in Baldwin's camp who say that you were overcharging this?
Well, we disagree, and we're going to be taking that in front of a judge and allowing the judge to decide on probable cause. But we think that there is enough there, more than enough there, to move forward on these charges and possibly to get through the preliminary hearing stage and on to trial.
And can you just break down the specific charges? So I was reading through your announcement. You say that both Hannah Gutierrez-Reed and Alec Baldwin have been charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Can you unpack that? What does that mean?
Well, and those are 2 counts in the alternative. So when this goes in front of a jury, the jury could find they're guilty on both, but since they're in the alternative, they will only be sentenced as to 1 count. The first part of the involuntary that we'll be charging is that they acted without due caution and circumspection, meaning they weren't just negligent in their duties, but that they were on notice, that they had duties, and that they should have done or not done something that didn't happen on that set, meaning they should have checked the bullets. They should have checked the gun. They shouldn't have even been using a live gun that day. They should have been using a rubber or a plastic gun. All of these things go together and show that there was just this complacency, lack of care on that set, and it's more than negligence, and I would say it rises to recklessness. The other goes hand in hand with a misdemeanor, a petty misdemeanor here in New Mexico called negligent use of a deadly weapon, and that is that someone handled or used or touched a gun in a negligent manner. And once we show that, then that can lead to the second alternative theory of involuntary manslaughter.
Does it matter for an actor? Obviously, there's been this discussion about safety on sets. The last time I interviewed you, you even mentioned you were surprised to learn that these sets operate like this in some circumstances. But if you have an actor with what he or she thinks is a prop gun, not a real gun, is that actual negligence if it turns out that gun can actually shoot?
It's more than that. Every person that handles a gun has a duty to make sure that if they are going to handle that gun, point it at someone and pull the trigger, that it is not going to fire a projectile and kill someone. And this is really about justice for Halyna Hutchins. We've talked to many actors, A-list and otherwise, that have said that they always check their guns, or they have someone check it in front of them. So it's not... an actor doesn't get a free pass just because they're an actor. And that's what's so important, is that we're saying here in New Mexico, everyone's equal under the law. Everyone has to follow their duties and do what's right and take that safety into account so that this doesn't ever happen again.
And is Baldwin being charged as an actor who was holding the gun, or as a producer on the set who was negligent about the safety standards? Can you help describe that?
He's being charged as both. He was the actor that pulled the trigger, so certainly he's charged as an actor. But also as a producer, he also had a duty to make sure that the set was safe. And we know from our investigation that there had been accidental misfires prior to this, that there were people that were complaining about safety on set. And so he should have been aware that safety was an issue on set. And then as an actor that day, he should have checked that gun, checked those projectiles.
Just a couple more questions, because I know your time is short. Do you expect any type of plea agreement from Baldwin or Gutierrez-Reed? Have those discussions started?
That's not something I can comment at this time. It's unethical for a prosecutor to talk about plea negotiations or potential plea deals.
Were they given a heads up that this was coming?
Yes.
They were?
They were.
How did those discussions go?
We have been in, I would say, almost constant communication with the opposing parties' counsels for about the last 6 weeks. They didn't know exactly what was coming, but they were aware that we were contemplating charges, and they were aware of what the contemplated charges were.
And just two more questions. So what happens next? So once these charges are filed, which I assume is tomorrow, right? Is that the plan?
It'll be before the end of this month.
Before the end of this month. So then what happens? Are these defendants then required to come back to New Mexico, or will they be placed under arrest? How does that work?
No, we will not be asking for an arrest. In typical cases in this county, the way that we handle it is we'll send out what's called a summons. From that, the court will set what's called a first appearance, or it's basically an arraignment. And at that point, they will either have to come here, or they might do a video arraignment. We have been doing those since COVID. And they will get their conditions of release and enter not guilty pleas.
And finally, last time you and I spoke, which was right after this tragic incident occurred, you told me that you know that there is pressure out there, people either wanting to charge, people not wanting you to charge. One thing you said was, you know there's pressure, you do not feel that pressure, and you will follow the facts, and the prosecution decision will be made on the facts.
Right.
That was at the beginning of the case. Do you still feel the same now, looking backwards? This obviously got international attention. Can you just talk about that? What was it like trying to conduct this investigation, and was it done in this consistent manner throughout? Oh,
absolutely. Of course I knew there was pressure. Of course I knew that people had feelings one way or another. But that happens in every single case. And what's important to me as a prosecutor is treating everyone equally under the law and getting justice for the victims. And so that pressure did not affect me in any way whatsoever. This was a decision based on the facts and the evidence.
Madam District Attorney, thank you for your time. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Kate, we'll throw it back to you. Obviously, a major decision here that we've been waiting for in this case. Now, actor Alec Baldwin, as well as the armorer on set, charged with involuntary manslaughter.
Josh, while you have the DI, I know she's short on time. She said something in there that I wanted to see if you could ask her really quick. She said that Alec Baldwin pulled the trigger. Baldwin told ABC he was adamant he did not pull the trigger. She is confident Alec Baldwin pulled the trigger?
Yeah, so my colleague Kate is asking, so Baldwin has said that he didn't pull the trigger. Obviously, we know the FBI report says that that gun could not have gone off cocked without pulling the trigger. Are you confident that he actually pulled the trigger?
Yes, absolutely. The FBI lab is one of the best in the world, and we absolutely believe that the trigger had to have been pulled in order for that gun to go off. The trigger was pulled.
So that your assessment is based on that FBI analysis at Quantico looking at the gun itself and how it operated?
That's right, and that's one of the reasons that this investigation did take a long time. We were waiting on that, trying to make sure we had all of the evidence and were able to gather absolutely everything, and we were sure of these charges before we filed them.
Great. Thank you, ma'am. Kate, back to you.
Josh, does she know how that live round got on that set?
Yeah, and one question which we've had is, do you know how the live round actually got on the set?
We don't, and we might not ever know the answer to that question. And I do believe that's a bit of a red herring. The point is, live rounds were there, and they weren't checked. They should have been caught. 3 people should have been checking those projectiles and should have caught them.
But that wasn't a major decision in your determination to actually charge here.
Correct.
Okay. And do you think that, I mean, obviously you look at the facts of this case, but, you mentioned before how surprised you were to see the lack of safety on this set. Mm-hmm. Are you also trying to maybe send a message to other, people out there making movies that, look, there will be consequences? Is that part of your decision?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In New Mexico, we want you to come here. We want you to film movies, but we want you to do it safely. And we certainly want to get justice for anyone that is a victim. Like in this case, we want to get justice for Halyna Hutchins.
Yeah, and that is key. Obviously, we've been hearing, Kate, that there was a victim in this case, which we have to remember. Cinematographer Halyna Hutchins, although this appears to be an accident, she lost her life in this incident, Kate.
Absolutely. Josh, thank you very much for the great interview. And please thank the district attorney for us, because I know she doesn't have any IFB. So thank you both very, very much. Joining me now, because there's a lot to go through now hearing from the district attorney herself. Back with me, Elliot Williams, Chloe Milas, and Dutch Merrick. Elliot, what's your reaction to what you just heard from the DA?
Okay, so I heard 3 big things there, Kate. Number one, the notion that accidents can be criminal. Look, accidents happen all the time. People get injured all the time without any civil or criminal liability, but sometimes some accidents are regarded in the law as so egregious that somebody ought to be charged with a crime and go to jail. And she made that point and was very explicit about it. So 1, accidents being criminal. 2, another thing she said, she sort of talked a lot about, things were fast and loose on the set, and they failed to carry out their the terms she used were basic duties to secure the set and ensure that dangerous weapons or anything that might hurt somebody was secured. And she made that point. This gets back to the point we were talking about earlier on negligence, where people have a duty to ensure that they are behaving in a manner as other reasonable people would or should behave in the same circumstance. And finally, and this is a big one, she noted that people complained on the set, and there were reports that a number of staff on the set had left shortly before this shooting, and one of the things that they'd complained about were the conditions for safety for crew and actors on set. That's a point that certainly played into criminal charges, given that the actors and or producers, and again, she noted that Alec Baldwin is both, were on notice that there might have been hazards on set. So a number of things that, she's speaking in prosecutor speak, but really bolstering all of her charges for and how she got to manslaughter, killing someone in an accidental death.
Very interesting. Chloe, you have statements in now from Alec Baldwin. What is he saying?
Kate, so I have a statement from Alec Baldwin's attorney that they just sent to me. This is how it reads, quote, "This decision distorts Halyna Hutchins' tragic death and represents a terrible miscarriage of justice. Mr. Baldwin had no reason to believe there was a live bullet in the gun or anywhere on the movie set. He relied on the professionals with whom he worked who assured him the gun did not have live rounds. We will fight these charges and we will win." Kate, I've told you that when I sat down with Alec Baldwin over the summer, he was adamant that he did not pull the trigger. I just pulled some of what he told me over the summer when we sat down. He said, "I pulled the hammer all the way back without locking it and the gun went off. I've never played with a gun. I never took a gun and pointed it at somebody and clicked the thing. I never pulled the trigger on a gun aimed at someone in my life." And you could probably find countless people that would testify to that fact. So, I mean, just based on the statement that we just got moments ago from Alec Baldwin's attorney, we know that he is going to fight this. We know that he will not take a plea deal, that he will see this through to a jury trial. And we are still waiting to hear from Baldwin himself, Kate.
All right, Chloe, thanks for bringing us that. Dutch, I want your reaction to everything that we heard, the description that the DA just laid out of the kind of how it was played kind of fast and loose. I think she said that complacency is a word that she used on the set. What's the impact now that we have these charges coming? What is the impact, do you think, going to be on the industry?
Well, complacency on that set is clear. When you look at the photographs of how the prop truck was handled, it looked like the truck had been tipped over. Nothing was organized. The way the carts were just strewn about. And that low-budget show, they had cut a lot of corners and didn't have a lot of time and didn't hold themselves to the standards that most of Hollywood does. I think the changes that should come about is especially the first AD insinuating himself into the situation, handling a gun. No first AD I've ever heard of has done that. That's a royal no. And when it said that, when the prosecutor said that Baldwin should have checked the gun, that is not the actor's responsibility. The actor puts a great deal of trust in us, the armorers and the prop department, to make sure that while we make it look as real as humanly possible, we also make it as safe as possible. And he was assured by a crew person, the first AD in this instance, that that gun was, quote, cold, or didn't have any blanks in it, or wasn't dangerous, and he acted accordingly. So he may have liability, but he put his trust in our crew, and that crew person, the armorer and the AD, failed him terribly.